When you live under a Soviet-style central banking price-fixing regime like the Federal Reserve, coupled with an inherently worthless paper fiat currency, you can never sound the alarm enough. And in the context of America, if you're a true patriot, if you're a true conservative, if you are a true liberty-minded individual, you cannot beat up on the Federal Reserve enough. And one of the big disappointments of the Trump administration to us real conservatives and patriots is that he has not done enough. He's failed so far to significantly rein in the Federal Reserve, which is the true fountainhead of our Leviathan government. In fact, all he's done is encourage the destruction of our dollar at virtually every turn, clamoring for lower and lower artificial interest rates. Translation, he is ceaselessly clamored for more money printing since he's been in power. And before you say this is nothing new, back in 2016, when the whole Trump movement was really taking off, Trump expressed favorability toward the gold standard, saying, quote, bringing back the gold standard would be very hard to do, but boy, would it be wonderful. We'd have a standard on which to base our money, end quote. So this issue, the issue of central banking and restoring sound money, which has been a cornerstone of true patriots and liberty-minded individuals for decades, is just another Trump contradiction and missed opportunity. Anyways, regardless of who does it, the Fed needs to be significantly reined in. The Fed only exists to create the boom and bust cycle, make life more expensive, and perpetually destroy our currency. It's a centralized, government-established banking cartel and Soviet-style price-fixing regime, as I previously said. It has zero place whatsoever in a genuinely free market economy, which America is supposed to be. Also, it's unconstitutional. Article 1, Section 10 makes it clear that only gold and silver qualify as proper money as far as the government's concerned. And spare me the argument that the necessary and proper clause justifies the Fed. All that's quote-unquote necessary and proper to coin money is a U.S. mint. We severely need to return to strict constructionism in all manners related to constitutional law. And that would especially help us with the monetary debasement/inflation issue. From a purely practical standpoint, all Americans should still be wary of the Fed simply due to its role in the 2008 market crash. Back then, the crash was caused by the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates too low. Sound familiar? And helping create a housing bubble. Other socialist government programs like Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, which owed about $5.5 trillion, including $2 trillion in risky affordable housing and subprime loans, poured fuel on the inflationary speculative fire. But fundamentally, the 2008 crash was built up by the Federal Reserve keeping interest rates artificially too low for too long. Translation, they printed too much money for too long. Then everything came to a head and the economy tanked once all the inflation and debt reached a critical mass. Bottom line, 2008 alone should have ended the debate and showed everyone that the Federal Reserve has too much control with its managing payments, regulating banks, and setting artificially low interest rates. Anyone who is educated economically, familiar with, for example, Austrian economists like F.A. Hayek understand this. In fact, F.A. Hayek had a concept called the fatal conceit, which talked about the conceit of those in power and how they think they can centrally manage the economy, but really they can't. And you could have easily applied this to the futility of central banking, and you still can, by the way. When the next crash inevitably happens, are you going to tell me we're not living within a huge bubble right now? Anyways, when the next crash inevitably happens, hopefully a critical mass of people finally wakes up to the reality that central banking is a cancer that needs to be rooted out. We don't need it. Our country did just fine under commodity-backed currency. In fact, we became a premier global economic force under the classical gold standard era. We had unprecedented wealth during the classical gold standard, wherein money actually gained value over time. Can you imagine that? Back then, regular people could actually save their hard-earned money and get ahead instead of like today's fiat funny paper money regime where everyone has to become an anxiety-riddled stock speculator / gambler just to try to keep pace with inflation. Never mind all of the inherent risk in the stock market. When you see it from this angle, the Fed really has turned society upside down. Because of the Fed's reliably persistent devaluation of your hard-earned dollars, the classical virtues of prudence and saving aren't rewarded anymore. And think of all the other societal perversions that spring from this when people stop believing prices will ever go down and that it's hopeless to save for the future. Ending the Fed and restoring sound money need to be renewed political movements. Ron Paul, the great Ron Paul, made noble progress bringing this issue to everyone's attention during his 2008 and 2012 campaigns, but much more needs to be done.